Pokemon Gym Leaders have been a staple in the franchise since the very beginning, and their jobs are very simple and understandable. They challenge your strength and they help protect the region. But there's one thing that majority of the gym leaders lack intensely, and that's representation. Let me give you just a quick example. Let's take a look at Rourke's team from the Diamond and Pearl games. He's a rock type gym leader, so you'd expect him to have some rock type Pokemon, and he does, fair enough, but only one Gen 4 mon. What's up with that? While I understand there's not a lot of rock type Pokemon in the Sinnoh Pokedex specifically, I do think there are still better ways that you could have gone about giving him a better team. And I would just like to state right here, right now at the beginning of the video, that this is all for fun. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to make a perfect team for every single gym leader just because some regions don't deliver enough of those typings or, so on and so forth. So for some of the ones where they're a little bit shaky, just take it with a grain of salt. So without any further ado, let's get started and take a look at Gen 1. Now with the Gen 1 gym leaders, there's not really a lot to fix since they perfectly nail it and can't possibly get it wrong. Every gym leader is forced to use a Gen 1 mod because that is all that they have, and that is the basis that we're going to be going off of. With that being said, let's not waste any more time and hop right on into Gen 2. Taking a look at the first gym here, Volkner has not one but two Gen 1 Pokemon. A simple and easy fix for this would be to replace Pidgey with Hoot and Pidgeotto with a Murkrow. Back in Gen 2, Hoo and Murkrow shared the exact same base stat total, so this works out perfectly. Moving on over to Gym 2, we are greeted with a plethora of missed opportunities. Bugsy has 3 Gen 1 Pokemon. Taking a look at all of the new bug types that were introduced in this generation and seeing that none of them were used, it's genuinely a real shame. First off, I'm going to be replacing Metapod with a Ladybug, considering that Bugsy's gym badge is literally the shape and color scheme of a ladybug. Up next, we're replacing one bug poison type with another bug poison type with Spinarak. And lastly, we're going to be replacing Scyther with a Heracross. Moving on over to Gym 3, we're greeted with Whitney, who does a bit better job, but can definitely use some improvements. First off, we're going to be increasing her roster by 1 so that she has 3 Pokemon, and we're going to be replacing that Clefairy with a Furret. Up next, we're going to be giving her brand new Pokemon, and that's going to be a Teddy Ursa. And last but not least, we're going to keep the Miltank. That thing is a genuine threat and does a good job because it is from Gen 2. So good job, Whitney. So far, you did better than Volkner and Bugsy. Moving on over to Morty, there's not really a lot we can do considering that there is only just one brand new ghost type, but we are going to be putting that ghost type in his team considering that, it wasn't there to begin with. Moving on over to Chuck, there's not really a lot you can do other than give him a Hitmontop. If you really wanted to, you could replace Primeape and Poliwrath with the Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee, just so that you could build up the hype for the new Hitmon, but that's really either or. That one's up to you. Up next, we're moving on over to Jasmine. We're going to be keeping her Steelix, but replacing her Magnemite and her Magneton with a Scizor and a Skarmory. I thought it would be cool to have Scizor in there because you already have one Steel-type Trait Evo, so why not just give her the other Steel-type Trait Evo? Moving on over to Price, we're going to be replacing his Dugong and his Seal with a Swinub and a Delibird and keeping the Piloswine. Moving on over to Claire, we have another Morty situation because there is only one brand new dragon type in this gen, and that is Kingdra. Now, the only thing I could possibly think of is to give her another Kingdra so that she has 2 Dragonair and 2 Kingdra, but this one, genuinely, I think it's fine. Dragon types are supposed to be rare, and she's doing a way better job at representing it than Lance ever did, so good on you, Claire. But yeah, if you really wanted to make a change, you could just add another Kingdra and replace one of the Dragonairs. And with that being said, we're moving on to Gen 3. Taking our first step into Gen 3, we see that Pokemon Emerald actually managed to clean up a lot of the gym leader teams and fix them up. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking some inspiration from Emerald, taking a look at the originals and combining them together just to make one big final team for them all. And we're going to be starting off with Roxanne. Taking a look at Roxanne's team from both of the games, we can see that she does a passable job at her team. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking the amount of Pokemon from Pokemon Emerald, that being 3, and replacing those 2 Geodudes with both of the brand new Fossils first stages. The reason why I decided to go with this is because Devon Corporation is right there It's right there, man. Their whole thing is like fossils and stuff like that. Come on, man. In Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, you can see a gigantic fossil right above her as you go into battle with her. I think this was a missed opportunity, but it's all right because we're here to fix it. Taking a cruise on over to Dewford, we are greeted with Brawly and his team of fighting types. Now, while Emerald does a better job at giving him a Meditite, I'm still going to be replacing that Machop and giving him a extra Meditite just because we can. Also because I think it'd be a little weird if we just gave him 2 Pokemon, considering Roxanne had 3 in the final selection. So yeah, 2 Meditite, 1 Makuhita, bada bing, bada boom. Moving on over to Mauville, we see Watson and his horrible team making. Oh my god, you have 3 Gen 1 Pokemon. Luckily, Pokemon Emerald takes a crack at it and fixes it up just a bit, but we're going to be making some little changes. Taking a look at his Emerald team, we're going to be keeping the Electric and the Manectric, considering that they're both from Gen 3, and we're going to be replacing the Voltorb and the Magneton with Plusle and Minun. I think this is a perfect idea considering that they go hand in hand with each other, and it's just we had the extra 2 spaces, so why not fill them with the only 2 new electric type Pokemon? Moving on over to Flannery, we're going to be once again taking inspiration from Pokemon Emerald because her original team comprises of 2 Slugmas and 1 Torkoal. But taking a look over at her Emerald team, they do it a lot better. They give her a Numel, Camerupt, and get rid of one of the extra Slugma. We're going to be replacing that Slugma and giving her an extra Numel and keeping everything else. Looking on over at Norman, there are absolutely no changes that need to be made. If you really wanted to, you could just give him an extra Vigoroth just so that he keeps up with the 4 Pokemon number count. But other than that, Norman, you've done the best so far, buddy. Good job. Thumbs up. Flying on over to Fortree City, we're greeted with Winona and her team of flying types. And we're going to be taking inspiration from her Emerald team and making just one slight change. We're going to be replacing that Skarmory with Tropius. I think this is fair considering that her whole gym and the town that she is in is surrounded by what appears to be a jungle. I think that just feels appropriate considering, you know, Tropius's whole get-up lore and look. So yeah, there you go, Winona. Moving on over to Tate and Liza, there's not really a lot that I would change. However, if we are going to make any change, which we are, we're going to be giving them a Claydol and a Chimecho just because it feels a little weird that they only have 2 Pokemon. I get its purpose for the double battle, but still, I feel like it would be better if they just had more. And finally, making our way over to Sootopolis, we're going to be taking a look at Wallace's team. He practically gets it on spot, except for that Sea King. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a look at his Emerald team and taking that Ludicolo and replacing that Sea King with it. I feel like Ludicolo fits it just because of Wallace's fruity nature and Ludicolo's fun and also fruity nature. I think it fits very, very well. And with that, we are done with Gen 3 and we are moving on over to Gen 4. Taking a look at the Gen 4 gym leaders, this is possibly the worst case we might see in this entire video because these are just atrocious. Oh my god. F for effort, barely any put in. So let's get to fixing them. Starting off with Rourke, this is literally just Brock's team plus a Cranidos. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I understand that there are not a lot of rock types that were introduced in this generation. However, like I also said, there are ways that you could go about giving him a proper team that just feels and is better. So with that being said, we're going to be taking away his Geodude and his Onix and replacing them with a Rhyhorn and a Nosepass. Now you may be saying, well, Egan, those aren't Gen 4 Mons. See, the reason why I chose those two is because both of those Pokemon get evolutions in this generation. Rhyhorn gets another evolution with Rhyperior, and Nosepass gets Probopass. I think it's a lot better to give these gym leaders Pokemon that will eventually evolve into a brand new one instead of just giving them ones that could apply anywhere. Because while you may not get it at first, once you see those Pokemon down the line in the game, you will be like, oh, that makes so much sense. There's a layer of depth to it. Up next, we have Gardenia's team, and really? You just had to give her a grass type starter because there are no other grass types that it could possibly have been used in this generation. Good job. Now, while this is probably the best case of representation in this generation, I still feel it's just very lazy to just have a Turtwig because there are other grass type options, but you just decided to go with the starter and totally make it feel not special anymore. Look, rant aside, we're going to be replacing that Turtwig with a Leafeon. Evolutions have always been something that gets the fans hyped up, and seeing one being used in a gym, I feel like that'd do it perfectly. Moving on over to Maylene is just a pain in my God almighty. Look, this one's very easy and simple. Give her a Krogunk and give her a Riolu, and then keep her Lucario. Simple as that. Moving on over to Crash Awake, we're going to be replacing his Gyarados and a Quagsire with a Gastrodon and a Mantine. The reason why I went with Mantine is because of Mantike and because I don't think Lumineon would fit the bill as a gym Pokemon more so, really. I think Lumineon's more just so of an aesthetic Pokemon than anything. So, yeah. Jesus Christ, if you're going to make gyms, then give the game enough Pokemon to give them. Taking a look over at Fantina, she actually does a pretty good job, and the only thing we're going to be changing is that Gengar, and we're going to be replacing that with a Rotom. I think Rotom would be nice since it's very convenient, and especially in modern day Pokemon age, Rotom can just be applicable for practically anything, and I feel like Gardenia could take use of a Rotom in some way, shape, and form. Moving on over to Byron and taking a look at his team, it just... So you're telling me you can give it a Bronzor, but not a Bronzong? Sure, okay. You already know what we're doing, replacing the Steelix with a Bronzong. Moving on. Moving on over to Candace, we're actually going to be taking a look at both her regular team and her Platinum team, because this is the first time Platinum decided to fix any of their teams. First and foremost, Medicham, get the out of there. Instead, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be evolving that Sneasel into a Weavile, and we're going to be taking her Piloswine from Pokemon Platinum and putting it in that team. Hell, if you even wanna, evolve it into a Mamoswine, why not? While majority of Candace's team had the right idea, it definitely could have just been executed a tiny bit better. And finally, we're on Volkner, and... Look, Game Freak, I need to have a talk with you. It's one thing to not give them Pokemon from their region. It's a whole other thing to give him Pokemon that aren't even electric types. All right, listen to me. I'm sick and tired of this Sinnoh bullshit, so I'm just giving him the team, and then we're moving on to Gen 5. Luxray, Magnezone, Electivire, and Pachirisu. Why Pachirisu? Because fuck you, Volkner. On to Gen 5. Moving on over to Gen 5, we're only going to be looking at the brand new gym leaders from Black 2 and White 2, considering that in Black and White, you were literally forced to use only Unova Pokemon, including all of the trainers, so there's literally nothing to fix. And for all of the returning gym leaders in Black 2, White 2, we're just going to be giving them their old teams, so there's no reason to even go over them. So yeah, let's get right onto it. Starting off strong with Sharon, there are literally no changes that need to be made. This guy understood the assignment, full pun intended, ha ha ha. Moving on to Roxy. This one's a real easy and simple one. The only thing that we're going to be changing is we're going to be replacing that Coughing and giving her a Trubbish, which is weird because I could have sworn that Roxy always had a Trubbish. Now taking a big jump all the way over to the last gym leader, we're greeted with Marlin and his team of water types. Now, not only are we going to be replacing one of the Pokemon, but we're also going to be giving him an extra one. We're going to be replacing that Wailord with a female Jellicent, and we're going to be giving him a Seismitoad. It felt a little weird that the last gym leader only had 3 Pokemon, so I just felt it would be cool to, you know, give him a 4th one. And moving on to Gen 6. So here's where things start to get a little difficult, because Generation 6 introduced the decks with the least amount of brand new Pokemon, sitting at 72. So with this one, we're gonna have to make some stretches just to make this work. Some of them will be applicable, some of them won't, but we're just gonna have to go with it. Starting off with Viola, this one's gonna be really easy. We're just gonna be replacing that Surskit with a Spupa so that it's Spupa and then Vivillon. I think that'll work nicely, and considering that this is the only bunch of new bugs that were introduced in this generation, doesn't really help, so we don't got much to work with. Moving on over to Grant, this guy actually has the best team in this entire slew of gym leaders, because Game Freak gave him both of the new fossils for this generation, and honestly, I think that's super underrated. Good on you, Grant. Moving on to Karina, we're gonna be replacing her Mienfoo and her Machoke with a Pancham and giving her back her Lucario. This is the part where it's going to get a little bit messy, because depending on if it's going to apply or not, I am going to be giving the gym leaders corresponding Mega Evolutions, considering that that was the big gimmick for this entire generation. So from this point on, it's going to get a little weird. Moving on over to Ramos, we're going to be replacing his Jumpluff and his Weeping Bell with a Phantom and a Pumpkaboo. Taking a look at Clement's team and the options that we have available, it's going to have to be another Karina situation where we're going to have to give him a Pokemon that can Mega Evolve. First off, we're going to be replacing that Emolga with a Dedenne, and we're going to be replacing that Megaton with a Ampharos. The reason why we're giving him a Dedenne is because his younger sister Bonnie owns it, but technically it is Clement's Pokemon. blah, 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 blah. You get the point. Moving on. Taking a look over at Valerie's gym, this is possibly one of the worst executed gyms of all time. Considering that this gym is supposed to represent the brand new typing that just got revealed in this game, and seeing that she has only one brand new fairy type, it's genuinely really upsetting. So we're going to be fixing this right away. First and foremost, we're going to be replacing that Mawile with a Florges. I don't even know how and why that did not make her team to begin with. And next up, we're going to be replacing that Mr. Mime with a Klefki. Now, there are a bunch of other options that better fit the fairy typing, but I'm going to go with Klefki just because it's different and it shows that fairy types aren't just cute pink stuff. Moving on over to Olympia, we're going to be replacing her Sigilif and her Slowking with a male Meowstic and a Malamar. And last but not least, we make our way over to Wulfric, where we are only going to be replacing one of his Pokemon, and sadly, it's going to be a duplicate, but we got to do what we got to do. We're going to be replacing his Cryogonal with an extra Avalugg and keeping the Abomasnow. Considering that Abomasnow got the Mega Evolution, we're going to be just letting him have it. So yeah, and with that all said and done, we are done with Gen 6, and this was probably one of the more difficult ones to do, considering that, like I said earlier, this gen just offered not a lot of new Pokemon to work with. But it's because of that rule that I'm much more lenient with Gen 6 in comparison to how I was with Gen 4, considering that Gen 4 had a lot more Pokemon than Gen 6 did.
Especially considering that, you know, Gen 4 had about like 20 plus more Pokemon than Gen 6 did, so, you know, just bear with me.
And now it's finally time for the song that I've been waiting to edit to. Gen 8, let's go! Skipping over Gen 7, we're greeted with Gen 8, and oh my god. There are 12 gym leaders in this goddamn game. But considering that both Beedee and Marnie weren't gym leaders by the time where we got to their corresponding type gyms, I'm not going to be counting them. So that way, all we have to do is cover the 10 gym leaders that we got. And because of the fact that we're going to be going through 10 gym leaders, I'm going to try and get through this as quick as possible. And first up is Milo. And luckily for me, there's no changes that need to be made because Milo understood the assignment using a Gossifleur and an Eldegoss. Thank you, Milo, for being smart. Making our way over to Nessa's team, it's not that bad, and there's only one thing that we really need to change, and that's that Goldeen. I think a fun and easy solution for this would be to replace Goldeen with a Cramorant, just because, I mean, come on. Look at this thing. This thing's hilarious. Up next, we have Kabu. Personally, I would have replaced that Ninetales with a Sizzlipede and replaced that Arcanine with a Carkol. Moving on over to B, we're going to be replacing her Hitmontop and her Pangoro with a Grapploct and a Phalanx. And since Machoke has that Gigantamax form, we're going to let her have it, especially considering since if we didn't let her have it, we would have to double up on an extra Pokemon. And I think it's fine because it's part of this region's gimmick. So yeah, it gets a free pass. Up next, we have Alistair, who for the most part does an amazing job. The only thing that we're going to be changing is we're going to be replacing that Mimikyu with a Sinistea. And obviously because of the same reason for B, we're going to be keeping that Gengar because, like I said, Gigantamax, gimmick, all that good stuff. Moving on. Up next, we have Opal, and we're going to be replacing her Mawile and her Togekiss with a Hatterene and a Grimmsnarl. Up next, we have Gordy and you know what? Just give him 3 Stonjourners. I don't give a damn. Fucking Gordy, who cares? Unfortunately, Gordy should have been taking notes from his mother, Melanie, because she is next and she got it spot on. There is absolutely nothing I would change about this team. She does it perfectly. She's got brand new Pokemon, regional variants, and even has one that's part of the gimmick. Melanie, you beautiful woman, God bless you. But you could have helped your son pick a different type profession. Moving on over to Piers, unfortunately, we're going to have to double up on a Pokemon that was already given to a previous gym leader, and that's going to be a Grimmsnarl. And we're going to be replacing the other 2 with 2 Thievul, just so that we can make this work. And finally, we are at Raihan, the last gym leader of Gen 8, and we're going to be giving him the team that everyone wanted him to have. I'm going to just make this real nice and simple. Duraludon, Dragapult, Dracovish, and Dracozolt. Enough said, moving on, Gen 9 and the final gen. We're in the final stretch now, and we're starting off strong with Katie. Now, while her team is perfect in a way, I am going to be making one change. I'm going to be replacing her Teddy Ursa with a Fido, just because she also works at a bakery and we can just slap on that bug Terra type on it. So yeah, that's really the only change I'm going to be making, but I feel like it's very appropriate. Up next, we have Brassius, and there's only going to be one change. We're going to be replacing that Petlo with a Bramblin, just because I feel like that entirely fits his whole design. I mean, honestly, looking back at it, I'm surprised he didn't have one. And obviously, we're going to be keeping the Pseudo-Wudo. That is like the best use of this new mechanic I think I'll ever see ever. Making our way over to Iona, the only thing we're going to be replacing is that Luxio with a Tadbulb. I tried to think of something to replace Mismagius with because I feel like there has to be something that would fit her better that isn't an electric type than Mismagius, but I couldn't end up thinking of anything. However, if you guys think of something, please feel free to drop a comment down below. Up next, we got Kofu, who honestly, I wouldn't really change anything. I think the water type Crabominable fits him very appropriately in his whole nature. So yeah, good job, Kofu. Up next, we got, it's Best Boy Larry. The only thing we're really going to be changing is we're going to be replacing that Komala with a Mousehold. Moving on over to Rhyme, there's not a lot of ghost types in this gym, but there are just enough to make this team work. We're going to be replacing that Mimikyu with a Ceruledge, and we're going to be replacing that Banette with a Graveyard. Up next, we're going to be taking a look on over at Tulip's team, and there's not really a lot to change here, other than we're going to be replacing that Gardevoir with a Armarouge. And finally, last but not least, we make our way to the final gym leader of this video, and that is Grusha. Now, there are quite literally only 2 brand new ice types that we could actually use to give him. Those being Satitan and Citadel. I'm gonna be real, I really don't see any other answer other than just giving him 2 Citadels. I understand that this is a very lazy answer, but it's the only thing I can really think of. And I can't really think of anything better to replace the Ice Terra type Altaria with, so I'm just gonna leave it there. I know that's pretty lackluster considering we just went through this whole video changing a majority of the gym leaders and their teams, and this last one just kind of being like, whatever, but it is what it is. And with that being said, that's going to be the end of this video. If you guys have enjoyed what you've seen, please be sure to go ahead and drop a like down below. And if you guys have any changes you would make to these teams, be sure to comment them down below. I'm actually really interested to see what you guys think. With that being said, my name is Ziggy Media, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Take it easy.